Terrorism in Canada, which is something that is pretty unheard of, is now in the press because there was a recent attempt at a terrorist act here in Canada, specifically in Toronto, which is historically uncommon given that Canada doesn't really experience local terrorism, even though there are terrorist activities that happen all around us in the surrounding countries. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I do want to encourage you all to smash the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It does really help grow the channel. We have quite a bit to cover in this, but the main focus is it just me, or does it feel like the government isn't really taking the right precautions or the right response to everything that's going on in the world? If you just look at the surface level of the news, it's stressful enough. You can actually make yourself sick. You can compromise your own immune system by consuming too much news, or at least that's how it feels, right? This crazy thing happened over there. This woke thing happened. Now the Olympics here, and this is happening, and this protest and that protest, and look out your window, you got Palestinian flags, and oh my God, and then Hamas leaders get killed, and there's just so much happening in the news. And especially since Donald Trump's attempted assassination, it feels like you would suspect that the world would be on a heightened level of security. Not necessarily like what happened after 9/11, how every security detail in the world changed, every airport in the world really changed, but something you would suspect that something would happen, at least a small little step forward in tightening up our security. Maybe Canada would say, oh, okay, we have an increase in issues here in Canada, all the ongoing conflicts around the world, all the tensions around the world with global affairs, geopolitics. You'd think that Canada would be like, okay, let's just close our borders a little bit, pinch things up, create a smaller funnel, heighten our security, make sure that we're not letting in more bad people, because Canada already has likely let in a lot of bad people into our country. And that, we're really heightening our security. But that's not the case. I mean, for crying out loud, days, within less than a week or 2 weeks after Donald Trump's attempted assassination on live television, you had I'm not saying that this ever would have ended bad, but you had a independent journalist who was able to approach Justin Trudeau with little to no security on a beach in Tofino. Like, what if that was the wrong person? What could have happened? Why was Justin Trudeau so easily accessible on a beach? What the hell is going on? And why does it feel like the news doesn't match the level of security that the world is going through? Or I guess the other way around. There is no response to all of the craziness that's going on. I'm getting winded here, just getting on with the intro. So without further ado, let's just get into the video. We're going to start off by taking a look at Canada's terrorism level. We're set to a medium. We've been a medium. Canada's current level is a medium, meaning that a violent act of terrorism could occur. And it has been at this level since October 2014, which is insane because since October 2023, you've had calls to violence from specific groups saying, we are coming for you. We are going to attack you. It's literally been everywhere. Millions of views. The media covered it. Everyone covered it. Everyone is aware. So what's going on? Well, our attention span, yours and mine and the world's, the government's, is so conditioned to swiping to the next thing. What's the latest news? We're sending how much to Ukraine? What the hell did they just recreate at the Olympics? Hamas is dead? Terrorism in Canada? The hockey season is starting soon? Canada just won a gold medal? It's all over the place. And that's not your fault. It's not my fault. But you would think that our government would take things a little bit more seriously. But it turns out that they don't. And that is a really massive issue. So in the past 24 hours, hell, in the past 12 hours, you've had a public announcement by the RCMP saying members linked to ISIS were going to bomb or do a terrorist activity. Actually, it hasn't been disclosed. We're going to take a look at it right now together here, that they were going to do an act of terrorism in Toronto, right here in Canada. We don't know where, we don't know how, but we're going to take a look at what the police have to say about this event. That just happened, as well as Hamas leaders, the first in command, second, third, fourth, fifth, a bunch of them wiped off the surface of the earth, bombed, assassinated, gone. And what does our prime minister have to say about anything, right? Well, let's take a look. It turns out Justin Trudeau doesn't and hasn't acknowledged anything that's happened in the past 12 hours. You look at his pinned comment on X, it's about capital gains. You look at 44 minutes ago at the time of this recording, it's about dental care. You look at a few hours ago, it's about rent and how that should be applied to your credit score. And you go further back, and then all of a sudden we're too far into the past for any of the recent news to have even occurred. So he hasn't acknowledged anything. And look, I don't want to shit on Pierre Poilievre. When it comes to geopolitics or certain events, it turns out that the leader of any opposition party in any given country doesn't really matter. It's only the figurehead. But Pierre Poilievre hasn't really said a whole lot other than, well, just right now, I just refreshed my page 5 minutes ago. At least Pierre Poilievre, I take it back. Pierre, you're a top G. Pierre himself has just said Hamas leader's dead. That's awesome. But there hasn't been anything yet about this. And then 4 hours ago, he's talked about Hamas. Okay, so that's awesome. Pierre Poilievre, while I'm recording this, I'm having to shift my narrative just a little bit. Good job, Pierre. You dodged one on this one. But he also hasn't said anything about what's just happened with this terrorism threat or terrorist event that could have happened but got blocked by the RCMP. And so it just feels like so much shit is happening. And look, it's not Pierre's job to acknowledge these things. He's the leader of the opposition. He's actually going above and beyond by acknowledging these things and doing it in a way that is so impressive that it overshadows Justin Trudeau. Justin Trudeau, the leader of this country, is so far behind, is so desensitized to any of this. It doesn't want to make any tensions less, that he just stays out of it, which only adds more fuel to the fire. That's not how a leader should be doing. A leader should not sit on the sidelines and go, I'll let the people sort it out. No, a leader should take command and say, this is wrong and this is right. And he's not doing that. In fact, Pierre is doing it, which is a precursor for Pierre to be Canada's next prime minister. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to look at some statistics. Hate crimes are on the rise in Canada. They've increased by 7%. Immigration is being bragged about by Canada on a Canadian government website, saying we are hitting historic numbers, historic newcomers in 2022. When you look at Canada's definition of is immigration good? Yes, immigration is amazing. We need more of it. And then we're left with stuff like this, right? Father, son arrested for alleged terrorist activities in GTA. This is insane, and we're going to take a look at what the police have to say about these events.
I'm here to provide information on a terrorist attack that was prevented by the RCMP Federal Policing's Greater Toronto Area Integrated National Security Enforcement Team, who we'll call INSET. The GTA INSET is made up of the representatives, many of whom you see before you today. The RCMP, Toronto Police, CBSA, the Ontario Provincial Police, York Regional Police, Peel Regional Police Service, and the Durham Regional Police, with assistance that we get from the Ministry of the Attorney General of Canada and of Ontario and the Public Prosecution Service of Canada. INSET investigates threats to national security, including criminal extremism and terrorism. These investigations carried out by INSET look into the most serious threats to Canada's safety and security. On July 28, 2024, GTA INSET arrested a father and son at a hotel in Richmond Hill who were in the advanced stages of planning a serious, violent attack in Toronto. We became aware of this in early July. A publication ban is currently in place in order to protect the integrity of the complex investigation. However, I will speak to the details that I can provide at this time. With the consent of the Attorney General of Canada, and where appropriate, the Attorney General of Ontario, 2 individuals stand charged with a number of criminal code terrorism offences. Ahmed El Didi, age 62, and Mustafa El Didi, age 26, face charges for their alleged terrorist activities, including participation in the activities of a terrorist group, ISIS or Daesh, contrary to Section 8318 of the Criminal Code. Facilitating a terrorist activity, contrary to Section 8319 of the Criminal Code. Conspiracy to commit murder, contrary to Section 465 of the Criminal Code, for a terrorist purpose. 1 count each of possession of a weapon for a dangerous purpose, contrary to Section 88 of the Criminal Code, again, for a terrorist purpose, those weapons being an axe and a machete. In addition, Ahmed El Didi faces 1 additional charge for aggravated assault, contrary to Section 268 of the Criminal Code. I want to emphasize there is no evidence to suggest that there is any remaining risk to the public. I would also like to say that I'm very proud of the impressive team effort that went into this investigation. The success would not have been possible without the work done by all involved civilian and sworn members and a collective effort from our partner agencies that I've mentioned earlier and that are here before you. I would also like to thank the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, CSIS. They also assisted with this investigation, as always, and I want to thank them for their assistance. Along with our law enforcement partners, the RCMP remains committed to combating violent extremism both in Canada and abroad. Thank you for everyone coming here today. I'll be now reading this statement in French, after which I will turn it over to our moderator to lead us through the Q&A portion.
So the biggest takeaway from this, the biggest questions is, why did it take until the advanced staging, the advanced levels of this plan for the Canadian law enforcement, for CSIS in conjunction with RCMP to intercept these people? Did they need enough evidence to say, finally, we're in the advanced stages, now that we have tangible proof that you were going to commit these things, then we can nail you on these offenses and lock you away? But this kind of begs the question, is this going to be, a deportation? Are they born here? Are they going to be released out on bail? We don't really have the answers to this. And when the police officer said that, I want to reassure the public that you're safe, this is where it becomes a little tricky, because just the other day, just yesterday, 12 hours ago, you had leaders of Hamas got bombed, wiped off the face of the earth. This is an issue for global tensions. We need our prime minister, we need our government to be aligned on this. We don't need a division with the stupid NDP and the stupid liberals to disagree with the conservatives. Hamas, bad. End of story. Right? And the fact that the NDP and the liberals are disagreeing on these viewing points and allowing for that rhetoric to spread in government is only allowing for more divisiveness to happen in this country, which is going to increase tensions, which is likely why you had, I'd love to know the motives. I think Canadians deserve to know the motives as to what the hell actually happened with these two people and how they got to advanced stages of committing this level of terrorism, right? I don't know if we're going to find out what they were actually planning on doing, but nonetheless, there's a few more questions that Canadians deserve to know. And we'll have another video pulled up here by CBC. Let's take a look at this.
Okay, let's get to news closer at home, because in the Toronto area, the RCMP have announced terrorism-related charges against a father and son. Now, it's believed the pair were in the advanced stages of planning a violent attack. The CBC's Megan Fitzpatrick joins us now from the Toronto newsroom with more on this story. So, Megan, what are we learning about the investigation and the suspects?
Well, please hold.
Before I continue, folks, I do want to know down in the comments, how do you feel about this? How do you feel about terrorism taking place here in Canada, or potentially have been taking place here in Canada? And before I continue the video, I do have something that's quite interesting pulled up here on Wikipedia. So here we have a list of international threats and attacks that have happened since, the early 1900s or somewhere in the 1800s in Canada. So you've got 1840s, 1864, right? These are all happening. 1868, 1965, 1966, right? The Cuban Missile Crisis. You got 1966, 1967, 1967, 67, 69, 71, 72. And you scroll down, let's just skip ahead to the 2000s. In the 2000s, the only international event that has happened that has involved Canada didn't even happen in Canada. It happened in the United Kingdom, where police arrested an Ottawa native who worked with British Islamists to plot and detonate bombs in the UK. And that's as best as you're going to get in the year 2000s and above. Then when you look at list of domestic threats and attacks, you've got as early as the 1920s, right? 1924, 1960s, 70s, 80s. And then when you look at the 2000s, you have 2000 in Vancouver. Also, again, later in 2000 in Montreal, 2001, Montreal, 2006 in Ottawa, 2008 and 9 in Dawson Creek, BC. You have 2010 in Ottawa, 2012 in Quebec, 2013 in Toronto, 2014 in Moncton, 2014 in Quebec, 2014 in Ottawa, 2016 in Ontario, 2017 in Quebec, 2017 in Alberta, 2018 in Toronto, 2018, and you go on and so forth, as recent as 2013 in Surrey, right? And so this just goes to show that it seems like domestic attacks in the 2000s are very much on the rise here in Canada, especially over the last like 9-ish plus years, which also happens to coincide with our Liberal government and their failures. Their failures to address certain topics, their failures to take things seriously, their mismanagement of the budget. Look, when it comes to our own country or other countries' problems, would you rather Canada have more resources here to stop and prevent shit like what we just saw with the RCMP and CSIS working together and stop the attempted terrorist activity of something that could have happened in Toronto? Or would you rather send money to Ukraine? Because we're coming to a point where it is one or the other. You have to pick and choose. And unfortunately, people have voted for sending money to other countries to solve their problems when they're not even allies or part of NATO. It just doesn't make any sense. And so this is why we need a proper government, proper management, which isn't going to be the solution, the one and only solution to these issues, but it will be a contributing factor in getting our country back on track and tightening up immigration, tightening up who comes into this country, who can stay here, tightening up our domestic surveillance, so to speak, to make sure that we are actually protected and that this nonsense stops. But yeah, sure, let's keep sending money to Ukraine. Let's continue this video.
Holding a news conference just a little while ago in Newmarket, Ontario, Natasha, where they gave some details about these arrests, saying it is a 62-year-old father and a 26-year-old son living in the same residence in the Toronto area who have been arrested and are now facing a list of charges. Police saying they were arrested on Sunday at a hotel in Richmond Hill, north of the city of Toronto. Now, they are accusing them of plotting a terrorist attack. Police saying they became aware of this alleged attack in early July, so just a few weeks ago. Now, there is a publication ban in place covering this case, so police were pretty limited in terms of the details they could share, but they did list the charges that the father and son are facing, terrorism-related charges. They include conspiracy to commit murder for the benefit or in association with a terrorist group, and in this instance, that terrorist group is ISIS, accused of facilitating a terrorist activity, participating in an activity of a terrorist group, as well as weapons charges, possession of an axe and possession of a machete, 2 separate charges there, Natasha. Now, again, police saying this has been a very fast-moving investigation. Here's some of what they said about that.
This was a very fast-moving, and the investigation came to our radar and emerged in a very quick fashion. So as far as what we did investigationally, I'll refrain from commenting on techniques or how we proceeded with this, but the information that was presented to us was sufficient to obviously launch an investigation, and it led to enough evidence to result in charges against these 2 individuals.
So they're not going to get into the details of how they learned about this alleged plot, but he said generally that the RCMP receives information in a variety of ways. And again, limited information on the suspects, Natasha, other than police saying they are Canadian citizens. And again, they live in the Toronto area.
Really disturbing stuff. What did you learn from the police about the target of this alleged attack that was being planned?
Well, again, not too many details because of that publication ban, but they did describe the alleged plot as a serious and violent attack that the father and son were allegedly planning on carrying out in the city of Toronto. They said they're still working on establishing any specific communities within the city that may have been the target of this alleged attack, or any specific people. They did say they don't believe there's an ongoing threat to the citizens of Toronto in connection to this pair that has been arrested. But when asked what they meant about this alleged plot being in its advanced stages, here's what they said.
They were charged with having particular weapons. In other words, we're pretty confident how close they were to moving from simply having those tools and then moving on to actioning that threat. And so I couldn't tell you 6 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours. But once again, what I'll say is, because of the swift nature of all of law enforcement, our partner agencies on this, we were able to halt that threat.
They said they weren't aware of any other locations that the suspects were allegedly planning to attack Natasha. As far as they know, and said the target was going to be just in the city of Toronto. One other detail they shared, one of the men accused is also facing a charge of aggravated assault that occurred somewhere outside of Canada, allegedly, in 2015. And again, related to terrorism, according to the charges, for the benefit of, at the discretion of, or in association with a terrorist group, again, in this instance, that terrorist group being ISIS. Now, police were asked, how do you know about this alleged assault that occurred years ago somewhere outside of Canada? And again, they could not share details on what led them to lay that charge. So a lot still to be learned, Natasha, in the days and weeks ahead as this case makes its way through the justice system. The father and son are scheduled to appear in court tomorrow.
Okay, Megan Fitzpatrick in our Toronto newsroom. Thank you, Megan.
You're welcome.
This is probably the most insane news coming out of Canada in the past since the last crazy news happened. I don't even know. It seems like there's craziness that's happening every single day, and Canadians, as much as we don't respect Justin Trudeau, he does represent our country, and he is the figurehead of our entire government and our nation, unfortunately, until the next election. And so it would be very awesome, and also part of your job, Justin, to make a speech about this and address this. But no, let's leave it up to the leader of the opposition and literally everybody else other than our own prime minister. Kind of crazy that this is happening. And again, I just want to pass the question. I just want to pass the question off to you. How do you guys feel about this? How do you feel about the police, law enforcement intercepting these actions? Was this too broad of a description for you? Are you looking forward to seeing what happens or like the footage, or at least the information that comes out of court tomorrow from this the first court appearance trial, or whatever you want to call it? Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. That's where we're gonna end the video. On your way out, I would like to encourage you guys to smash the like button and subscribe if you haven't already, and we will see you in the next one. Bye for now.